Good morning. Well, it's Tuesday. Yeah, 3 more days we'll be celebrating that it's almost Friday. Yay. But yeah, we got out and supposedly by this evening we're going to have rain again. And then rain for 3 more days. Oh, who knows? But grab your coffee, tea, hot chocolate, and we'll be back in just a moment to have a chat. There's every day in the past week or so, just let me change the tilt here. There's been more news of bodies being found. I think the last two were in North Vancouver. There were two just by my place here in Burnaby. So, where are all these bodies just start showing up from? People need to worry about this because I think what it's showing is that there's organized crime and, drug deals gone wrong. And, I think it's all tied into who could have BC's drug wars and, who can do this and who can get more people hooked. And why do people want to live like that? Why do people want to constantly be living in a lifestyle that's going to have you constantly looking over your shoulder and having people coming after you? Oh, well, the money's good. Well, what are you going to be able to do with money if you're going to get killed for doing it? I can't see what the point is. But I guess there's enough out there who think they're going to make their riches from doing this. Now, I think we can think back pretty well to when we were all 20. And, oh well, nothing's going to be able to beat us. And, well, it won't happen to me. But drugs are killing the users. Drugs are killing the sellers because everyone is fighting over the drug in the drug territories. And, I think it's time we've got to stop. The drug culture has grown so much. Well, yeah, pot isn't addictive. Well, pot itself may not be addictive, but, to achieve the high nowadays is so much crap is put into the pot that people are being killed. Well, fentanyl is being added to drugs, and I think we need to say, hey, stop it. There's always excuses for doing drugs. Oh, well, life's just too difficult. Well, get out there. Get out, go for a hike. Why are you wasting money? Why are you wasting your life where you could be doing so much more than drugs? And I believe that a lot of these killings are doing with people getting retribution for drug deals gone wrong, for taking, selling in someone else's area. Now, I used to work at a store in Metrotown Mall, and there was two pushers, if you want to use that term, just on sort of the bridge, just as sort of began to walk across it to Metrotown, and they were fighting over there, saying, "Well, you're on my space. I've been doing this here for 6 months now, and you've got to give me all your money." And well, what happens if people don't give them their money? Well, they're probably going to end up getting shot. And we have to stop this. And I've said this story before. When I was teaching for 7-Eleven, new employee training, there was a person there who went out for a lunch break and came back, and he smelled of pot. It was so bad. I had to pull him aside and say, "I'm sorry, you can't continue on because you're high." And he virtually gave me the excuse and said, "Oh, well, come on now, everyone's doing it." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, you can't do it here and work." And I suggested he go back to his manager. And the manager pretty well said the exact same thing back to me. And I had to call the field consultant because they said, "You're going to have people high, and when you're high, you're not thinking correctly, and most of these drug dealers aren't thinking correctly, and all they can see is the golden dollar sign, and they're willing to kill for this." But I think this is where the problem really arises, that they are killing just for the sake of money. And, money can always be replaced, but lives can't. And, we keep pulling after people and, drug addiction and, how the federal government should get into the pot business, make pot legal. Well, it's going to be decades before they can ever get the hope of having control over the same as the cigarette and tobacco industries. But, I find anyone who smokes pot, "Oh, well, it's not as bad as nicotine." Well, I think it's now showing us that it is as bad as nicotine. So, when you're lighting up in the 60s, it was pretty well homegrown. You could be safe. Yeah, you would get a buzz and everything would be fine. But in the last 40 years, 40 years, things have changed. And people are adding stuff to the pot. And why do they keep adding all this? Well, we'll just keep getting people hooked. And then they'll have to come and get more out of us. And then, people will always be indebted to us. And, If they can't pay their bill, we'll knock them off. And I think that's what's happening to our young people in parks and reservoirs. And, there were two in here. Was it two or was it three now? I think it's three. We had one shooting back here and two stabbings. And that was, well, we know the shooting was because of a drug deal gone wrong. But why? Why do we constantly have to feel like we have to get out there and kill someone? I can't see where that would make anything better. Oh well, they have to have some way of getting their money. And you know what? I don't really care. I think people have killed too many times. And, well, if that's the life they chose, well, that's wonderful if that's the life they chose, if that's all it is. But it isn't, because every time someone gets killed, it's the taxpayers who have to pay for someone to come pick up the body and then come, make sure there's a autopsy, and all that is not cheap. But yet, we seem to think that's okay. And I think we've got to stand up and say, stop it. We need to get back to a simpler time when drugs were not such a big issue. But, in the 60s, it started and people, there were more ways, and it was more kind of like, oh, well, it was more of an underground movement. And then, there LSD came involved, and so I think we've got to stay away from constantly wanting that extra high. Get out, get high on life. There's so much more you could be doing with your life. Kids, if you're ever offered any drugs, don't do it. The big thing when I was in high school was you shouldn't smoke and you shouldn't take drugs until you were of legal age. Well, once you get to legal age, the thrill is gone. Well, there's some, and there's always going to be people who have problems with cigarettes and have problems with alcohol. But we have to look into ways of stopping people from hurting other people just for money and just for getting to be the bigger person worth of drugs and everything. And I think we have to do this. I don't think it's a choice nowadays. They say, well, we'll legalize pot. Well, I'm not against people from getting high on pot. But, it's sort of like, oh, well, I always liked that buzz. And when pot no longer delivers you the buzz, then people look for other drugs. And while I don't say that pot itself is addicting, I think people get tired. Sorry, I have a cold here. And people are saying that drugs, you always want a bigger thrill. And I don't think pot is what you can always get for the bigger thrill. So, you go in the neighborhood, you roll around. Well, I roll around. Some people go for walks in the bushes behind us. Sometimes it just stinks to high heaven. And, you know, saying, oh, well, the federal government can step in and start controlling pot and get all the money out of it. Well, then we're going to have to deal with more people getting involved in other drugs. And maybe not from a necessity viewpoint, but from the viewpoint of where the high is not as great as it was the first time. So it's something you need to talk about, and we need to come up with answers. Because too many people are losing their lives. Something to think about. Okay. The U.S. election. It's the election that never went away. We are so sick of it, and, Trump's claiming now, he's tweeted again, saying where, millions voted illegally, and he's totally against any recount. And, there's still protests wherever he talks or in front of Trump Tower. And, he says it's the Democrats. And we're getting sick and tired of, all these votes that supposedly have happened illegally. But I think the U.S. government has to open up to where maybe invite third or fourth parties to get involved and to supplement their input into an election. There is no sort of right or wrong in any of these elections. It's just different viewpoints. And when a person only has two viewpoints, then, a lot of times it's, oh, why should I vote? And, in Canada, we have the same sort of thing. We have at least 5, sometimes 6 parties running. And it always comes out where, only 39% of the electoral people voted. And, the one thing I think differs from Canada and the States. Now, there are 2 different types of electoral systems. However, what I think needs to happen is that all across, if it's within a state, that the state runs the election. But if it's a federal run system, that the federal government runs it. I'm appalled to hear that a state can change its rules and different people can run, or different people, can choose that, oh, it's, we're not going to allow for people to vote past a certain length of time. And, what's the point in running an election when you have different people coming out with different rules? Now, we saw the problem in the way Florida voted, and we then saw the hanging Chad thing, and now there's Wisconsin is saying they're going to do a recount because there may have been improprieties there. And I think Pennsylvania is another one that they're thinking they want to have a recount because there could have been improprieties there. And I think there's got to be a way that we come up with better sort of timeline for the political vote in the United States. I realize there are so many people across the state or across the United States voting. And that's fine. But I think you definitely have to come up with more choice than just two. Because we really just see name calling, and I don't think there's a party out there for the American people. They all just want their private my hair's out. Their private interests. How much money can I make for so and so? And I don't think so and so's the best leader, and we need to. And I'm sorry, you really need to get this under control. Now, I think you need to come up with one system of voting. It can still be run and observed from the states, but they have to at least have one set game plan that everyone, when they go in to vote, that they're voting for whoever's running in their neck of the woods, but the rules are all the same. And that if somebody shows up to vote, they have to have the right documentation. I'm just pulling, or they can vote between these times. And I don't, the states can be open to many differences. One being that, during this time, these people can vote during this time. This state can say, oh, well, you can have early voting, but in someone else in the next state over could be, it's a complete difference. And, that, I think, opens things up to so much more constitutional infighting. Oh, this person did that, and this state allowed this, and that state allowed that. Why can't each state have, or not each state, why can't there be one set of federal rules for running a presidential election? I think so many people are upset because they said Hillary Clinton has won the popular vote, and then Trump says, well, if you take out all those people who couldn't vote legally, then, well, you've got to think that people are out there wanting to play with the election. I'm sorry, that's my insulin pump. But that's got to be a small point. And, when you have people saying there's inconsistency in, I think the list is 4 states, I think there's got to be something out there. But what? What do we need to keep spending all this money. Now, I wonder how many of the elected officials would still be in the race if it wasn't for all that money raised. And, if they had to go and fight for every dollar and not taken by corporate America, and corporate America is selecting the next president, and corporate America could have a say. And, even corporate America can be down to the NRA. And, I think if the average American could donate, we wouldn't have these great big huge amounts of money being spent on the election. It is, my hair is up. It is just astronomical how much money people spend trying to get a person elected. And we need to stop that. Or not we, the American people need to stop that. But when do we say enough is enough? And people need to get out there. They need to vote. They need to support if they want to make donations, which is great. But, they say, well, TV and radio is so expensive nowadays. We have to be able to get our message out. But, I think a lot more would go to representing the American people and get away from representing the corporate interests. It's something the Americans have to deal with, because the rest of the world isn't going to go through another presidential election like we just had. Enough is enough. Talk to you later. Bye. Okay, in Calgary, Alberta, there's a sad story of a woman of a 7-year-old boy who lived in squalor, who would not take her doctor to, or her son, to see a doctor because she did not believe in conventional medicine. If your son or daughter is sick, take him to see a doctor, even as a secondary precaution. If the child is sick enough and he needs care, well, put him into a hospital to get over the situation. Conventional medicine may not be the answer for everything, but it does a hell of a lot better than most other types of care. And I think we need to stop being foolish. And, if your son or daughter gets a cut and, your aunt or uncle has come up with this miracle cure, that's great. And that's something that could promote healing, or, something that could help the medicine. But if it was my son or daughter, I'd do anything to make sure he or she was not or could do better. And I don't think it's up to parents. They are charged with doing whatever can come along to help a son or a daughter get better care. You can do something. You can live, eating fresh vegetables and whatever. But if your son's lying there getting sicker and sicker, maybe you should take a look into conventional medicine. Now, I'm not saying that they're right all the time, but if what you're doing at home isn't helping, then, get off your soapbox and find out why it's not doing it. I get the same sort of feeling from, people who believe in Christ so much that, if Christ wants to repair him, God will make sure that will happen. And you know what? A simple little verse has always taught me that people who just believe God's going to do it all and God is going to make their son or their daughter whole again is misleading, because God only helps those who help themselves. So, God may open up the door for you to go to that doctor, if you're in the States, to get funding to go see the doctor. But just to say, oh, well, God called them home, is not right. There are certain times when children really get ill, cancer, flus can, progress, where you get pneumonia, and having the chance to save a child's life, but no, I don't believe in conventional medicine. Well, that's great. You may not believe in conventional medicine, but who says you have a right to say what your son is saying or what's right for conventional medicine for them? They may, it's kind of like, well, I don't believe in conventional medicine and you just lie here and die because they don't know what they're doing. Well, that could be the case, and there could be many cases like that. However, as a parent, you need to investigate anything. Now, this could involve, your son, your daughter is in conventional health, in the hospital or whatever with cancer, and nothing is working correctly there. Well, then, you know what? Go look at health or holistic medicine. I don't think any one thing has the answer, but I think we have to continue to look. Maybe it's a combination of both, but to have her son die in a dingy apartment, because she doesn't believe in conventional medicine. If my son or daughter kept getting sicker and sicker because of what I was doing, I would definitely try to be finding other ways to care for them. But to just say, oh, it's because that's the way it has to be. I believe, what is it, I think, blueberry bark, or there's a euthanasia, Or there's a whole bunch of holistic care that can offer help. But I think sometimes we have to take a look and see, what does conventional medicine have? And can it be helped by anything else? And just sort of saying, well, I'm going to shut this door because I don't believe in it. I'd be the first one to say to a mother who has a sick son who, has gone through chemotherapy and radiation for leukemia, and nothing, they keep getting closer to death. Well, take a look at other things. With the internet now, you can really do a search engine and you could go off and search many different things. You don't have to be there and go through stacks of medical books like this and you don't know what half they're reading. Most of those sites now you can find will have a special area written in English that anyone can understand. But we all we all have this choice on how well we want to take care of our bodies. And, I'm all for that. If you want to live a pure, holistic lifestyle, that's great. But when you get ill and it's not doing anything for you, maybe you need to take a look at a different avenue. Same as if you took a medical, conventional medical look, and then they weren't doing anything for you, well, then take a look at the different areas. I think this was a waste of a young person's life. And a mother wanting to believe that the child is not well, and but I don't believe in conventional medicine, and your son dies. Not only do you have to live with the grief that your son has died, but that you could do something for it. Now, everyone who believes in regular health care and their son keeps going to pass away or whatever, and you find something of interest, by all means go for it. But I really think we have to stop and take a look and say, God helps those who help themselves. So, all these things I keep bringing up are things we need to talk about and come up with solutions. Because in some areas, the solutions we have aren't working anymore. So, we'll be back with our closing thoughts. Okay, so, there's an awful lot of closing thoughts out there, but different points of how we can change plans about what's working, what's not working. I don't believe to have all the facts. I'm just saying what's on my mind. Now, that doesn't mean, it's all meant to be, you're all wrong and that. I'm just trying to open up so that you can talk amongst yourselves. And who knows, maybe out of this we can come up with solution to some of our problems that we have today. But, who knows until we at least try. So I'd like to thank you and hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye now.